Hello, everybody. Welcome to Coffee Time with Byron. I'm your host, Byron, alongside on Zoom, former Major League player, Matt Miller. And if I do believe so, you were a pitcher, correct?
Absolutely, relief pitcher.
Now, let's get started with that. I saw that you were known for your sidearm delivery, that unique style form. How hard is it to pitch like that compared to regular pitching?
It's not for everybody. I think a lot of people tend to not have the looseness and whip in their arm when they drop to that slot. Fortunately for me, I was always really flexible with my arm action, and so when I decided to make the switch, it came pretty natural. So I mean, I'm not as far down as a submariner would be, but I was more kind of right to the side, like true sidearm style of pitching.
Now, you made your debut 2003 against the Colorado Rockies. Take us back to that, and what were you doing when you first got the call that you were going to be called up to the majors?
Well, it was the first time I got called up. I was actually with the Rockies. Made my debut against the Pirates in Pittsburgh, but I was 31 years old, man. So it was something I didn't expect. Most guys are in the big leagues and have established themselves by 31. I was 31 and kind of starting to look at what I was going to do after baseball. I think I was in my 8th year in the minor leagues, and it was just a time that I was really not expecting it. So when it happened, it meant a lot more, I think, than I guess I shouldn't say it meant more, but it was just really unexpected. So it took me by surprise and was very emotional, and tried to make the most of it, but was sent down about 2 weeks later, and then fortunately, the next year I got up with Cleveland Indians for a while, so that's kind of how it went down. Something I didn't expect, but thankfully it did. It happened.
Now, who called you and said you were coming up? Was it the manager? Was it your minor league manager at the time that said you were getting a call up? Was it ownership, GM? Who gave you that call?
I was called into the office by Rick Sofield. Rick Sofield was our manager in AAA, Colorado Springs Sky Sox. He was in the room with a guy named Mike Gallego, who played in the big leagues with the Oakland A's. Actually won the World Series, I think, in 88 or 89. They were in the room, and I think me and the guy named Ben Petrick. I don't know if you're familiar with that name, but Ben we both got called up the same night, and so he was called up before me, and then a few minutes later they called me in the office, and when I found out, it was, I think everybody when I got called into the manager's office, I think everybody was kind of aware of the situation, because I was a veteran on the minor league team, and I don't think anybody expected it, and I think whenever I did get called in, that there was a lot of guys behind me and supporting me, so that was pretty cool.
Now, like you said, you were obviously a veteran for years in the minor league organization before being called up. How difficult is it going through the minors and then waiting so long to get that call up finally? How difficult is it to be in the minors for so long?
Well, you have friends and families back home that have started their careers, and and financially, people don't understand how a lot of people don't understand how baseball works. Professional baseball, you get paid 5 or 6 months, depending on whether you're out on a 40-man roster. Most of my career in the minor leagues, I was not on the 40-man roster, so it was a 5-month pay scale. So you have to find some things to do during the off season. Fortunately, I spent most of my minor league career in AAA, and so I was able to land jobs in winter ball to help out. But Yeah, it was one of those things. You're there so long, you wonder if it's time to get out. But I was always one of those guys that wanted to play until I just didn't have an opportunity in front of me. I didn't want to, look down the road 10 years later and kind of wonder what would have happened. So I was going to play it out, man. I feel like if I wouldn't have made it to the big leagues, I would have probably played another couple of years, just because I was putting up decent numbers and was always an arm to have in the bullpen that I think managers could rely on. So it was a little stressful, but it was also baseball. Who doesn't love baseball and getting paid for it? So I was going to let it play out and see what happened.
Now, with you being there for so long and you being a veteran, and you saw a lot of young guys from aging anywhere between 18 to 25, 24, etc. What's it like playing alongside them, and were you able to help them along the road or train them to make it into the majors someday?
I think that, later in my career, I was 37, I believe, when I retired. I remember my last team was AAA with the Pittsburgh Pirates in Indianapolis, and we had Andrew McCutcheon was on that team. I think Andrew was 20. We had a guy named Jesse Chavez who was 20. We had Neil Walker who was 21. These are all guys who played several years in the big leagues, and they hadn't made it yet. So for me, it was a little weird being in a room with guys that young, just because I was on my way out and they were on their way in. So that was a little different, just dealing with two different types of two different times in your career. I was probably old and ornery, and they were young and vibrant, ready to get after it. I was settling down and had family, so that was a little different. I don't think it never was an issue, but just you tend to hang with guys with a little bit more time in the game, or may have families as well. As far as teaching, it was. I think teaching. I think I talked more about what to expect at the big league level for guys that I knew would probably get there, and even the guys that may not get there. But it was just kind of letting them know how things were at that level, letting them know that the game doesn't change. I think a lot of young minor leaguers seem to think that the big leagues is just somewhere they don't belong sometimes, because when they watch SportsCenter or Baseball Tonight, they see the highlights and they think that's what those guys do all the time, but they don't show you the other 2 or 3 at bats that a guy like Mike Trout has, that where he grounds out or he strikes out on a bad pitch. They don't show you those at bats. So when you go up there, all you remember seeing is what Mike Trout did on a highlight.
Right.
And I think a lot of kids fail to realize that they're all human up there also. So I tried to help with that. I don't know about coaching as much as developmental stuff as much as I did the mental part of it.
Did you give them any advice, like what to handle, since you were the big leaguer in the room? Did you give them any advice?
I tried to. There was always a set way of things, the way things happened. I remember I got called up at 31, and you know who you are when you get called up. There's veterans in the room. I was 31 years old, so I was probably a little older than some of the veterans in the room at the major league level, but there's just a system in play there. It's not something makes me feel that it may be a little different these days, but there was you knew your place kind of. When I got called up, I remember I had a couple of guys, veteran guys, that kind of showed me the ropes when I got there, and and I respect them for it. Bob Wickman, Arthur Rhodes, a few other guys. Those were veteran guys that they understood the game from kind of the way they were brought up, and so rookies had to earn their spot. Veterans kind of ran things, and I just try to prepare guys for that, and not so much don't enjoy it or don't be comfortable, but just you're not going to be blaring the radio and the big leagues as soon as you get there. Give it a little time before you control that knob. But I think trying to prepare for things like that was fairly beneficial for that. Maybe not so much on the development side, because I was a sidearm guy and I didn't really have, as far as the mechanical part of the game, I didn't really offer a lot for that. But the mental part of it, I think I offered more.
So you were obviously a sidearmer, and you said yourself you were a regular arm thrower before you decided to go to sidearm. Why'd you ultimately decide to do sidearm? Was it because you wanted to throw off hitters more, and you could strike out more people? What was your mindset in thinking like that to change up your style?
Well, it really wasn't my choice. Sherry Thompson was my junior college coach in Mississippi at a school called Mississippi Delta Community College. My freshman year in college, I threw over the top. Velocity was probably 83 to 86, maybe 87. Very average stuff. Possibly could have made it to a 4-year school, but probably wouldn't have been a guy that the manager or the coach would rely on as much. So when Terry asked me, if I would be interested in throwing sidearm, instantly I thought he'd given up on me because I was struggling in the fall of my second year, my sophomore year. But once I decided to make the switch, I realized really quick that guys were having trouble hitting me. My velocity actually increased. I actually got up to low to mid 90s, and that's not typical for guys that throw sidearm. I probably pitched 88 to 90, 91. But occasionally got up to 93, 94, and that doesn't hurt at all. And then I have a sweeping slider, so I basically had two pitches that both were hard, and they looked like they were coming, right down the middle of the strike zone. One would go left, one would go right. So that allowed me to be effective, and it just it took off for me after my sophomore year in junior college, and it didn't change much from college to pro ball. I mean, I probably picked up a little bit of velocity and got smarter with reading hitters, but not much changes mechanically.
Now, looking back at the sidearm pitchers that have been in the majors and even in the minors that you saw, what would you say when you were throwing sidearm? Did your sidearm look more alike in the majors?
If you're familiar with a couple of guys one named Stan Belinda, he was a guy a little before me, played with the Pirates. He kind of threw pretty hard. He threw pretty hard and was kind of a whip action type guy. His body was upright, his arm action was to the side. That was one of the guys that I felt like I kind of resembled. Pat Neshek was a little bit more funky than me, but I think the slot was about the same. And Pat had a really good career. But as far as other guys, that there's a guy with the name's drawing a blank now, but with the Braves a couple of years ago, the Australian guy. You may remember his name.
Darren O'Day.
No, not Darren O'Day. This guy was played with the Braves 2 years ago, I think. 2 years ago.
Peter Moylan.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Peter Moore, that's right. He's similar to me. So there was a few guys that I could look at and kind of watch, and but I didn't get really low. I didn't tilt my body over very much. I was more upright.
Now, looking back at your career and towards the end of your career, did you know that your final game? Did you know that it was going to be over for you? Your last game, which was June 12th of 2007 for the Indians, did you have a funny feeling that was going to be your last MLB game?
Not really. I tell you what, I hurt my arm the year before. I came back in spring training and pitched really well, and then I pulled a muscle in my forearm, and I believe the Indians probably thought it was related to my elbow, which I'd had surgery on the year before, but it was just a muscular thing. Spent about a month and a half in AAA rehabbing and trying to get ready. Never really quite came back velocity, but I did get called up, and they had a couple of guys in the Cleveland bullpen that were struggling, but they were out of options. So I felt, I'd get up there and prove myself that maybe I could stick around. Well, I got up and got sit down really quick without giving up any runs. Got a little aggravated about it, but figured it. I would be back up soon, and things just never really developed. I got called up twice, but sat in the hotel and didn't join the team one time, and I thought I would be called up at the end of the season once the roster expanded. But never happened. I was on a major league contract my last year in 07, so I thought that I would be a shoe-in for getting called up. I had a 2.4 ERA, 40 innings. So I felt like I was, something was going on. I ended up, getting out of that contract in October, and signed with the Red Sox. But I guess it was the timing was right. I just never could quite get back to the guy, I guess, that was able to throw every day. I always, kind of liked knowing that I was a guy that managers could call to every day. I remember pitching 5 games in a row for Cleveland one time, and then after the injury, it seemed like I would need a day or two off before I would feel 100% again, and that was kind of tough for a guy coming out of the bullpen. But in 2007, I thought I was going to get more opportunities, but I never did.
Now, do you think, going back in your career, do you think there was politics involved in the game where you probably felt like you should have been called up earlier than what you were?
I think there's always politics in the game. I don't hold any grudges or anything like that. I think I had a good career. I just, had some injuries, and I was a guy that also, in the very beginning of my career, there weren't a lot of guys that threw sidearm in the big leagues. More and more guys were getting those opportunities, and once I got my opportunity, I just couldn't stay healthy. I don't necessarily think politics kept me out of the game. I think there were some times in my career that I could have fought for myself harder, or I could have just not said anything. But I don't really think politics were the negative, had a negative impact on me. But I do know that they're part of the game. I mean, they always are at every level.
Now, let's talk a little about today's game. You were a pitcher right before the analytics started getting big. You, as a former pitcher, do you like how the game is going with analytics instead of pitching like you did, where it was just the mindset was, I'm just going to get this guy out. I don't care, I'm not going by analytics. What's your take on that, and how do you feel about analytics?
All right. Well, first of all, I don't have a problem with analytics or metrics or anything like that. I personally remember having our meetings about hitters on opposing teams before every series, and a lot of times we'd let things go in one ear and out the other, because I wasn't going to change the way I did things to pitch against the hitter's weaknesses. He was going to have to hit my strengths. At the same time, I feel a little different than a lot of guys. I couldn't get too mental with my approach, because if I did, I think I would get in trouble. I was a sinker slider guy, and I could tell you it was coming, and you just going to have to do it. You just going to have to hit it. Today's game, the one thing I don't like about it is manufacturing runs. The beautiful part of the game is lacking to me. I think it's more of a rear back and throw it hard as you can type thing, and trust your action, trust your movement, and let's see how far we can hit it type of game. I enjoyed seeing the small ball. I enjoyed seeing managers have to work and maneuver things throughout the game to earn a win. Nowadays, it just seems like a muscular approach to it, and that's not fun. I don't enjoy the game like I did. I don't enjoy watching it like I did. I think college is more fun to watch, but at the same time, I'm not necessarily against metrics. The job I have now is kids want to know numbers, parents want to know numbers, players want to know numbers, I don't think that's going anywhere. We just have to learn how we can use those numbers and those metrics to continue to develop players.
Now, do you see them going back to the era that you played sort of before that? Do you see them going back to playing small ball?
I think you see a little bit of it now. I think there was more bunts in the play. Lately, I've seen more bunts. I've seen, guys trying to go against the shift a little bit more than normal or in the past. I don't necessarily know if it'll ever get back to the way we, a lot of old guys and veteran guys like it, but I do think that it'll start to return, hopefully, a little bit more towards the complete player. I'm not a fan of. I don't necessarily want to see a ban of the shift. I think that players and good players should learn how to beat it. I'd like to see that. If someone in charge creates a ban on the shift, that's going to be a slap in the face to the game to me. There's a lot of rules and things that I'm not a fan of, but I don't necessarily know if we'll ever get back, but it's that's a tough question because there's a line that's it seems like there's a line of an age group that you like my son, for instance, likes the game the way it is now. I'm sure, and because he doesn't know the game the way I do.
Right.
And I hope there's some. I hope we can blend it together. That would be great for me.
Now, Bud Selig was around your time before Manfred took over. Out of the two that you've seen, that you've been a part of, because I think you retired shortly before Manfred came in, correct?
Yeah.
What do you think is different between the two commissioners?
I think that Manfred's probably got a lot of people in his ear trying to please a lot of people. I think Selig was more of a direct guy. And to be honest with you, I don't get caught up in too much in any of it. I don't like some of the new rules, but I feel like that the situation we've been in America over the last few years has created some of them. Hopefully they'll go back to normal. But as far as Rob Manfred, I know he doesn't have a lot of fans right now, but I'd like to see him kind of, I guess, side with former players and current players a little bit more than maybe trying to move forward in a modern era type situation, and kind of get back to the way the game was played and maybe leave it alone a little bit, not add so many rules. I know that the instant replay and the catchers, the strike zone, all that stuff, the future, of the catcher strike zone is in question, or framing and things like that. I enjoy the human element, the umpires. I know there's going to be bad calls all the time, but that's just the beauty of the game to me. And when you start adding too much tech and judgment calls of umpires, I'm not a fan of that. I wish Manfred could kind of help with maybe pushing that along a little bit or moving it out of the way so we don't have something worry about that. I'm just not a fan of where it's headed in that direction as far as that area.
Now, was there a time in your career that you remember that you, either minors or majors, that you were ejected, and what did you do to get ejected, or if you did, how close were you to being ejected?
I don't remember ever being ejected in the big leagues. I think I threw 100 games in the major leagues, but I don't think I was ever ejected. I do in the minor leagues a few times. Just frustration. I remember, in the minor leagues one time I was the San Diego Chicken, if you're familiar with San Diego Chicken, was at the stadium that night, and I was I think 1-6 at the time. I was a starter. This was in lower minor leagues, and just struggling defensively. Our team struggled. I think I had a 1.9 ERA, but was 1-6, and just kind of had enough one night, and umpire missed a couple calls that I thought were that should have been my way, and just frustration led to one thing, and got chased out of the stadium by the chickens. So it didn't happen too often for me, but I think I may have been thrown out of 3 games in my career. I've probably been thrown out of more since my career was over with than I have, during my career. Because I've been coaching a little bit since then.
Yeah, coaching your kid, yeah. Who would you say was the most difficult for you to strike out? Who gave you the most difficult at-bats in the majors?
I get asked this a lot. I had a little success against a lot of big-name guys. I think one time I looked on, I think it was Baseball Reference, and somebody was asking me how I did against certain players, and I went down a list of guys that I felt like were Hall of Famers or going to be Hall of Famers, and I think it was like a 110 batting average, So I did really well against, a lot of big-name guys, but guys like Joe Treaty, I don't know if you remember Joe Treaty.
Yep.
Carlos Guillen.
Yep. Tigers, White Sox.
Those were 2 guys that I know for sure owned me. I think Joe was maybe, had a few doubles, maybe home run, and Carlos Guillen, same thing. Another guy, Raul Ibanez, couldn't get him out. A lot of lefties. Joe was the only righty that I felt like I struggled against, but left a couple of lefties. I had fairly good numbers in my career. Those names pop out a little bit more because I just remember big at bats and just trying to figure out what I could do with them, and nothing ever seemed to work.
Now, do you think if injuries didn't derail your career, do you think you could have lasted longer than your last game in the majors in 2007?
Yeah, I was older anyway. I think my last year in the big leagues, I was 36 or 37, 36 maybe. I think I could have, I didn't rely on velocity too much, so I felt like I could have probably pitched a few more years. I think injuries kept me from playing maybe a couple more, maybe 3 years, but, I also feel like I maybe could have got called up sooner than I did. I think there's a lot of teams that were just not sure what I would do at the big league level, and I was always pretty successful in the minor league levels, but pulling the trigger on someone that's not a 40-man roster, or pulling the trigger on somebody that doesn't have any time at the big league levels, it's tough. I get it, but I do feel like I feel like once I got to the big leagues, I proved I belonged there, and I felt like I was the same pitcher maybe a couple of years before I got called up. So I felt like I could have, 6, 7 years, 8 years in the big leagues would have been not a stretch. But I don't look back and think, I was, anything was taken from me. I was just unfortunate with injuries.
What would you say was the most memorable moment throughout your career in the majors?
Well, that's crazy too. I don't necessarily know if it was games or a certain moment, but I do know that the coolest thing that one of the coolest moments I was in Fenway one night, and if you've ever been Fenway in the 8th inning, the Sweet Caroline comes on, and I was warming up in the 8th inning in Fenway, and I actually got the win that night, but it's also the night that I hurt my arm, and that probably led to my career, going downhill. But I ended up getting the win. But I just remember being on the mound and Sweet Caroline playing, and the fans going crazy and singing that song, and that's a pretty special deal. So if I think that's a moment I'll never forget, just because of where I was in the history in that ballpark.
Now, you mainly pitched in Progressive / Jacobs Field. How difficult was it to pitch in that ballpark? Because it's honestly a hit-and-miss ballpark. It's either it can be pitcher someday, it can be hitter-friendly some days. How tricky was it pitching in that ballpark?
I always love pitching there. I don't necessarily know my numbers, my home and away numbers, but I would imagine that I had decent numbers there. But you know, I always enjoyed it. I didn't like day games. I just was a fan of consistency, and every time we'd have a day game, it seemed like it threw a wrench in our kind of plan. You know, the way our routine or whatever, but. The one park I did like going in was Metrodome. You know, for the Twins, I don't know if I ever gave up a run there. I enjoyed going there at the turf, just something about it. But Jacobs Field, and I'll always call it Jacobs Field because my name's Jacob. When I got called up, my mom used to say, "Hey, they named the field after you." You know, so that was kind of funny. But yeah, I enjoyed pitching there. I enjoyed my time there. Of course, it was the longest I played with anybody, so. It felt like home. I've been back a couple of times since I retired. And, it's a special place.
Who was your manager at the time, and were you a part of any teams that were close to making it to the playoffs?
Eric Wedge was the manager when I was in Cleveland. We actually finished second in 2004, I believe, or 2004. We were maybe 2 games up going into the final 6 games of the season, and went 1-4 or 1-5, and lost I think to the Twins. Maybe I'm not real sure. You'd have to look that up, but we ended up finishing second in the division after we thought we probably were going to finish in the wild card or into win the Central. I think in 2007 I was part of briefly part of that team. I was on the disabled list for quite a bit that year, and so I did get some playoff share, but it was I wasn't active on the team that I think went to the divisional series against the Yankees, I believe. I can't remember now. It's been a while.
I think it was Yankees.
Yeah, so I was on a couple of minor league championship teams, but at the big league level, never got to pitch in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because I know that's what every ball player wants to get to is the playoffs, and I'm sure that had to suck for you because I'm sure you wanted to make it to the playoffs. You just
man. That's what you play the game for.
Yeah,
big league life is nice, and you can make a little money, and it can help you out going forward in life, but. If you're a ball player, a true ball player, you're in it to win games and championships. And I won a couple of minor league rings, but never got to experience playoffs at major league level.
Now I know as a former player, it's tough to still talk to colleagues that you played alongside with, unless these teams have reunions or etc. Did you establish any friendships along the way that you still come in contact with, besides the reunions? Do you still come in contact with anybody you've played with?
Yeah, I talk to some guys occasionally. Probably my best friend that in the game, and we don't get to see each other as much as we'd like, is Ben Broussard. I don't know if you remember Ben Broussard.
I remember him.
Ben was first baseman for the Indians, and his family, my family, been on vacations and stuff since we retired, and he's doing some good things in the game, and he was recently with the White Sox, and now he's him and his wife are doing some counseling and doing some great things out in Texas. We're going to actually get together in November for my 50th birthday up in Nashville with a group of friends. But as far as everyone else, I'll talk to guys here and there, just because I'm still in the game, and if they are, we run into each other. I run into players, former players, often throughout the year. But Ben's probably the guy I hang out with the most, talk to the most.
Now, like I was talking about the reunions, have you been invited to any former Indian reunions that have been throughout the years? Have you been invited by the team to come out?
No, I talked to a guy a few times about doing some of the fantasy league stuff, but my career now, what I do now, I'm tied up throughout the spring and pretty much year round with trying to promote young players and stuff. So It would be cool to go to some of those things, but honestly, I can't even go to my college reunion, and it's 3 hours from my house. It's tough to get back and stuff like that just because of what I'm doing now.
So, excuse me. Now, looking back at your career, what would you say that you're the most happiest about? Is it just being in the big leagues, your debut, your last game? What would you say was your best accomplishment out of those three?
I think for me, I was always a guy that I don't remember ever being the number one player on any team in high school or junior high or anything like that, or summer baseball. And I always felt like I had something to prove. And so that was kind of my motivation for getting to the big leagues. Is I always felt like I had something to prove. And that may not be the way a lot of people think it should be done. That's not how I teach players to go about things. It's not how I tell my son to do it. But for me, I always enjoyed knocking down doors and proving people wrong. And so actually getting to the big leagues, when I know there was a lot of people that didn't think I belonged there, and then pitching very well when I got there, I think will always be, something that drives me and gives me confidence, is because I just enjoy proving people wrong. That's simple as that, and I still do it. I still like to do it. I'm very competitive, but just reaching that level when, of course, so many people want to be there. The odds are stacked against everybody that tries to get there. Just knocking those walls down and making it. This is something I always be proud of.
Now, you were a relief pitcher, obviously. What would you tell relief pitchers of today's game? What would you tell them? What advice would you give them today?
Well, I mean, most pitchers don't do it the way I did it. The typical 95% of pitchers are normal slot guys. So I would say, first of all, preparation is number one. Make sure you're prepared. But it doesn't hurt to study your opponents. It doesn't hurt to have an idea of what you're going up against. It doesn't hurt to pick up tendencies and weaknesses. I didn't do it as much, like I said, because I was a two-pitch guy. Mm-hmm. But if I'm teaching, I'm teaching kids to prepare and research and understand your opponent. And prepare your body. I don't think there's enough young players these days that understand durability and how it can take you a long way. I was fortunate to make it, but I think I could have lasted longer if I'd understood what preparation of my body was supposed to be like. I just feel like that's an area that is sometimes overlooked by young players, and until the last minute or too late. So preparation, I think, is the biggest thing.
Now, openers. This was started by Kevin Cash and the Tampa Bay Rays, who ain't too far away from me since I live in Florida. What is your take on the opener that they started trending in the majors? What's your take on the opener? Do you like it or do you hate it?
Are you talking about, what do you mean, starting a guy for only an inning?
For an inning, yeah.
I don't like it. I just feel like the game for 100 years has been done a certain way. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there smarter than me, but I don't think it's something that will last. I just feel like it's almost a reach to try to change things and fix something that isn't broke. I feel like it's going to end up taxing a bullpen more than it will. It just doesn't seem normal. I mean, maybe I should do a little bit more research on it, but I'm not a fan of it.
Same. I agree. I think it takes away from starting pitchers. I honestly think that's taking a spot away, technically. Yeah. Now, what would you say is why do you think, in your opinion, starting pitchers don't last as long as they did when you played? Like inning wise, pitching wise, pitches wise. Why do you think they don't last as long in the games nowadays?
Are you talking about their career?
No, that when they're in a game, going their innings, complete games and all that.
I think front offices and management are looking at things based on longevity of a career, based on allowing a player to stay healthy, and sometimes that's sometimes that could go in the other direction. I don't remember ever being on a pitch count. I don't ever remember in high school or college any of our pitchers being taken out just because they reached a certain number.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that front offices or management allows pitching coaches to effectively do their job as far as watching a pitcher, understanding how the body breaks down over the course of the game, and when it's time. It's easy to see a guy getting, losing, his losing it and starting to give up hits and struggling. It's easy to see that, but if a guy's got 120 pitches and he's in the eighth inning, if his body looks healthy and strong and he's still got crisp mechanics and able to repeat them, then I think there's got to be someone that sees that and sees this guy can go back out. Now, of course, you don't want to take a guy and throw him 130 pitches every single time he goes out, but I think there's just a little bit too much emphasis on pitch counts and innings logged during the season. And it may be. Like I said earlier, there's a lot more guys smarter than me, but I don't see the. Maybe there is more of a breakdown of pitchers at the big league level, but I'm not doing that. I'm not keeping those statistics anymore, and never did. But I think front offices and management, front office management is kind of handcuffing a lot of these guys these days.
Now, do you think it's also because pitchers are throwing hard nowadays, like over 95 to over 100 miles per hour nowadays? Do you think that could be also why starting pitchers aren't lasting as long, because of the risk of maybe injury, like long-term injury?
Yeah, I guess so. It's like I said, if a guy's throwing 95 in the first inning, he's throwing 95 in the eighth inning, and physically he doesn't look worn down, or he hasn't had any stressful innings, then that, to me, the pitch count doesn't mean as much. If he's had a bunch of stressful innings throughout the course of a 5-inning game, he's up to 100 pitches, then that says a little different than a guy that throws 8 innings at 100 pitches or 9 innings at 100 pitches. I just feel like we've got guys that are watching those games that never were in those shoes and never haven't been involved in the game as much as they have involved in a medical conference. They're making those decisions.
Well, a couple more questions before I let you go. You said you're coaching, and you said you're coaching your kid. Does your kid have hopes and dreams of making it like you, or does he want to play ball throughout his career? What does he want to do that you're aware of what he wants to do with his career?
Well, I'm no longer coaching him. I still coach him on the side, but and take him to hit and throw with him. But he's reached the level now that I try to stay away from and just sit back and watch and be a dad. Mm-hmm. He does have his dreams. He has dreams like most kids. He works hard. He's a left-handed pitcher. He's probably going to be a big guy, 6'4", and throws the ball firm. He's got a shot, I guess. He's lucky to have people like myself and others in my neighborhood and area that played at a high level and that can teach and mold him. But he's still going to have to put in the work himself. he's probably got an advantage by being around myself and others. But at the same time, it can only get you so far. So if he does have a dream of pitching in the big leagues, which I'm sure he does, he's going to have to knock down some walls himself and break some barriers and put in the work.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's in high school, correct?
He starts high school. He'll be in the 9th grade starting next week.
So when do you think when the games get started, do you think that's when the whole scouting will be starting is around high school? Because was that when you got scouted originally, when you were coming up?
I never got scouted. I went to a small school in North Mississippi Delta. I didn't sign a scholarship, or I ended up going to the only school that offered me a scholarship, was the Mississippi Delta Community College, and that was after my senior year. So it was after a few weeks after my last game of my senior year. So it was a little different, a little different then. Nowadays, kids are committing to colleges in the 8th to 9th grade. He won't do that. I won't probably allow it. I think next year, his 9th grade year could be a big year for him. His body's still maturing. He's still, developing and kind of in the middle of puberty. So we'll see what happens when he comes out of it. I feel like he's probably going to pick up a lot of velocity or more velocity over the next year and a half. He's a kid that already getting close to 80 miles an hour. From the left side, I think he'll have some velocity. And I think colleges will probably start paying more attention to him probably his 9th and 10th grade year. But typically it's going to be the 10th and 11th grade when most kids are kind of reaching a position of, what type of prospect are they? Where are they headed?
Now, I ask this question to everybody. Don't be offended, because I do ask it to everybody. I know we're halfway through the season, and I know you still follow the game a little bit. Who do you see going into the World Series this year, and who do you have winning it, in your opinion?
Well, I'm always an Indians fan. I feel like they created the most, the most benefit for me and my family going forward in life. They gave me my first extended chance at the big league level. So I'm always rooting for them and hope to see them in the playoffs. My son's a Dodgers fan. He likes a lot of their players. I feel like their lineup is
top heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy, and they got the pitching. So I feel like they're headed back. I don't really watch as much as most people. I tend to really get into it around the last month of the season, and really start paying attention and getting a little bit more serious about it. But if I had to guess right now, I would say that the Dodgers will find themselves back there.
Do you think the Indians?
I think the White Sox don't look bad either.
Do you think the Indians have that potential with Terry Francona to do it this year?
Well, I think Terry's always going to give them an opportunity to succeed. I didn't like seeing them lose, Lindor, and I honestly haven't paid attention as much as I probably should. But I've been so busy with my prep baseball report stuff lately that I haven't been able to sit down and even really see where all the standings are. But occasionally I'll check in. But I don't think you can ever count Terry out. It's gonna. I'll probably start paying attention here over the next few weeks.
Yeah. Now tell us about that. Since you do that, that's what you're doing nowadays after you're done coaching. What is that you do? The prep baseball report. What is that you do? Tell us a little about it.
So prep baseball report is a recruiting service. It's mainly operated by each state. I own Mississippi, which is I own the licensing for Mississippi, and we basically just we have showcases so we can help players be seen by colleges. We have a website where their video from their performance and their metrics and measurements go online. We take players from Mississippi to national events. I'm headed out to Atlanta in a couple of weeks for the 3 teams that are comprised of some 10th and 11th graders, some 9th graders. I'm sorry, and we compete against other states' best, prospects. So it's all about promoting that young athlete and that youth, that high school player that's trying to achieve goals of playing at college level.
And now my last question to you is, in one word, define your career. What would that one word be?
Man, it's a tough one. One word. Man, tenacity. I guess I wouldn't let it go. I couldn't. I just really believed in at one time people weren't seeing what I knew I had in me, and so I just couldn't let it go until I made it.
Exactly, that's what you gotta do. Especially if you have dreams and aspirations, you gotta continue on with it.
Yep.
You got to. Your ultimate goal will eventually get to there. You just gotta keep going and going and going. That's what I'm hoping to accomplish with this, my ultimate goal. So you gotta keep doing it. I hope so too. But it was fun. Thank you for doing this. I'm glad I got a hold of you. I got your contact info. We'll be in touch.
You bet.
Feel free to come on as many times as you want. And yeah, it was fun. I had a blast, and I hope you did as well.
I did, man. Let me know anytime. I'm always available.
Definitely. And maybe I can get you on with Ben Broussard. How about that? Or
we'll do it. I can hook that up for you.
Yeah, because I do remember him, and I watched it. I watched when he got called up too. So I do.
Yep.
He was one of my favorite Indians players. Yeah,
Ben's a character too. He can beatbox and got some funny stories for you, and sings, and he's got a couple of CDs out now. So he's a character.
He was, and he was like that in his playing days too. So.
Yep.
But it was fun. Thank you. I'll definitely stay in touch with you.
You bet. You bet, Byron. Thank you, man.
No problem. See ya. You have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Matt Miller, everybody, former Indians pitcher. Great conversation. We'll be on tomorrow. I don't know who we're having on yet. We'll see. We'll let you know. But you all have a good night. Stay safe. Don't do anything